Happy New Year, 540-0580, 540-0580. Wishing everyone a Happy New Year. And, of course, it's the one-year anniversary of Weekend Appointment. That's right. We launched last January, the first Saturday of last January. And this is the first Saturday of this January, so we're going to call it a year, whether it is or isn't. 5 days plus, 5 days minus. I don't really care. 540-0580. I'm an attorney. You call in. I'll answer your legal questions here on the air. You can also go to weekendappointment.com, and I want to bring you guys up to speed. You might have saw a post on there saying we were kind of redoing the site. Well, if you go back and look at the front of weekendappointment.com, you might not recognize it. We're using a new version of the software that ran it before, but that allows us to post articles to the front. The forums is a link, and also link into the forums. So it allows me to put some more succinct information up there. I'm going to be putting up a bunch of sections with various tips to help you out. It'll include a little of everything, tips on custody and different things like that, besides just answering specific people's questions. And on the right, you can see the most viewed, and you can see new posts down the left. And when you look at the forums themselves, on down the right, you're going to notice some new boxes that'll help you quickly find what the new material that's in there and new things people have posted. And everybody who claimed their prize, your prizes will now be mailed. So if you were wondering when it's coming, we were waiting until the deadline to see who claimed what. And we're going to go ahead and send everything out. If you didn't claim a prize, shame on you. Good news is here we're going to give away another 2 $10 Applebee's gift certificates today. So if you're a registered user of weekendappointment.com by 7 o'clock tonight, you'll be eligible for a random drawing tomorrow. And that's everybody who's already a member and anybody who joins. So if you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener who's been too lazy to get to the computer, or you don't have a computer but you have a son-in-law that you can make sign you up, go ahead and do it. 540-0580. I also want to toot my own horn a little bit here. On the 28th, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania published an opinion granting relief for a client of mine. But what's important about it, I don't know if you know it or not, but it's very unusual to end up in the Supreme Court of a state. They hear very few cases every year, and it was an honor to have a case there. We actually won it. So from that standpoint, what does that mean? Well, it means we actually won it. And the issue in that case was attorney's fees, and it had to do with attorney's fee clauses in contracts. And this is probably going to bore you. But the answer is, the question was, what attorney's fees apply in a contract? Is it what the contract specifies, or is it reasonable attorney's fees? And basically the court has rewritten the contracts to say no matter what you wrote in your contract or what your language is, you will get reasonable attorney's fees, not actual attorney's fees, because courts won't be party to awarding excessive attorney's fees. That would affect any fee agreement an attorney has with their client, but more importantly, it affects all those attorney's fee clauses in divorce settlements that are out there, and it affects all those attorney's fee clauses that are in business contracts out there. So it was a case of major statewide importance, and it was, like I say, it was important. It was fun to argue, and it was great to win. So I'm tooting my own horn. If you go there, you can see an article on it on the weekendappointment.com where I show you the link if you want to read the court case. If you really want to bore yourself, feel free to do that. 540-0580, 540-0580. Also want to let you know we're going to be simulcast on the ticket as well. They're going to start, I shouldn't say simulcast, they're going to start repeating this show. If you miss it and you haven't had a chance to listen, you can either go to the podcasts on WHP 580, or you can get them from weekendappointment.com, or you can listen on the ticket in the morning. So it'll be on Sunday mornings. And Shane, do you know what time they're replaying this thing on Sunday morning or no?
I heard 8 o'clock, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, all right, great. I'll be up. Yeah, but no, seriously, if you get a chance, what's the ticket?
$14.60 the ticket.
$14.60. So if you missed the show today, and you didn't hear, because you're not hearing me say this, but in the future, if you missed a show, go to $14.60, because obviously you missed the show today, you're not going to hear me say it. What we're going to do with the ticket show, it's going to be a repeat of this show for a little while, and then hopefully we're going to be launching a separate show that's going to have a sports theme to it. We'll talk about the travails of various pro golfers and other folks who have contract issues and the like. We'll also do some work with fantasy football leagues and the like. And I'll have my Shane's going to be my call-in expert on that show because he knows more about sports than I do. Of course, I think Matt Meyer may know more about sports than Shane, but I'll let those guys fight it out on their podcast, which you can also get on the ticket. 540-0580. I did have a question on BAC testing, which stands for blood alcohol content. And somebody asked, what is the law in PA in refusing a BAC test? I always thought that since PA was an implied consent state that you were considered automatically guilty if you refused BAC testing. However, a coworker of mine just went through a DUI and his lawyer told me he should have refused. Well, I don't know why his lawyer told me he should have refused. There are certain circumstances when refusing to test might be the right way to go. Unfortunately, it also penalizes you differently and adds additional civil consequences. And it can harshen any punishment by making it treated as if you were the maximum BAC when you might have been a lower BAC. So whether to blow or not to blow is a question that really is usually only best answered in retrospect. And because of that, the right answer is usually to go ahead and give breath. But you're not automatically guilty if you don't give breath. You have to actually refuse, and a jury has to prove that. I'm going to be on the ticket from 7 to 8 a.m. on 1460. That's what you're telling me here, by the way. 7 a.m.? 7 a.m.? Oh, boy. We'll never do that show live, will we? Oh, that's pretty early. BAC testing, the idea is you are not automatically guilty. You need to actually be found by the jury to have willfully refused. And it's possible that they won't agree that when the government calls it a refusal, it was a refusal. Nonetheless, simply saying no, heck no, no way on camera might be deemed a refusal by the jury beyond a reasonable doubt, and then you're in trouble. But regardless of what happens in your criminal case, there's additional PennDOT sanctions for refusing, which are civil sanctions through the implied consent law. So rules of thumb here, you don't have to take the roadside breathalyzer, and you don't have to take the roadside field sobriety tests. You do have to take the test back at the station or the hospital. And if they ask you if you'll go back to the station or the hospital to take it, they're allowed to take you in custody. I've seen some police departments kind of asking people when they say no, they deem it as a refusal in the field rather than taking them in and then doing it. Although some departments take you in and then have you refuse while you're in front of the machine, so it's clear that you had the opportunity to take it. But you do have to take the official test, blood, breath, or urine, depending on what the police officer chooses. You don't have the right to choose the test either. 540-0580. Susan, you're on WHP 580.
Hi. I was just wondering what the difference is between a regulation and a law and a person's responsibility to follow them.
Okay. Well, the answer is they could be the same thing, but let me give you what I think what you might mean by this. Laws and regulations have the force of law, and you have to obey both of them, okay?
Okay.
But in Pennsylvania, for instance, we have statutes, and then we have the Pennsylvania Code. And the statutes are created, the criminal statutes and various statutes you might violate are created by the legislature and signed by the governor.
Mm-hmm.
The code, the Pennsylvania Code, and the regulations in there are created by the administrative branches, so the DEP, the Game Commission, the LCB, promulgate codes, and violating those codes can become enforceable and by themselves. So they could be criminally enforceable, civilly enforceable codes, and you have a duty to obey those as well. They're just created by a different process. The legislature and the governor have pre-delegated administrative law authority to these administrative agencies.
Okay, because I had heard a circumstance where a person had gone to court over something and it wasn't mentioned. It was mentioned in regulation, and when it got to court, it came down that, well, since it wasn't in the law, the case was dismissed.
Well, and here's the thing, like, whenever you're being charged with a violation of an administrative regulation, one thing a good lawyer will look for is to make sure it was properly adopted, and that whatever penalties it claims to carry were given, that the administrative agency that put them in place had the power to do it in the statutory structure from which they draw their power. So, for instance, it may be possible that they've created a set of regulations that claim to do certain things to you, but it turns out they didn't have the enabling statute to give it that actual power.
I see. So it would take a lawyer to dig through it to find out.
Yeah, and even then, it's a headache. But, and here's a dirty little secret: most of the laws and regulations and stuff that we're regulated by are made up by these administrative agencies and by the bureaucracy.
Right.
Not our duly elected, democratically elected senators and representatives and governors.
So then does that make a lot of it null and void when it comes down to the rubber meeting the road?
No. And in fact, like the Federal Code of Regulations and the CFR's Code of Federal Regulations, the PA Code, all those things have the full force and effect of law, assuming that they've been properly adopted and the enabling statutes are in place. And you should assume that 99.9% of the time they are.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Yep. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Oh, this song is about someone I know. He can't drive 55. Wonder who that is. Could he be here in studio?
Maybe.
I got here today and my producer wanted to know something about a speeding ticket. You can drive as fast as you want if you don't get caught, Shane. That's good legal advice.
You know what? I heard that before.
But unfortunately, they do tend to. Let me tell you about speeding tickets, folks. If you're pleading guilty to every speeding ticket you get, stop sign violation, etc., stop. See a lawyer. You'd be amazed how many points you can keep off your license and how you can stop from ruining your insurance rates. Most of the time, if you take a hearing, things can be resolved. There's certain times when the government just doesn't want to cut a deal, but they just don't seem to have the goods either. And you might think, oh, it's simple, it's easy. He saw me, he had a radar, he pulled me over. Really? Do you know when that radar was last certified? Do you know if the police officer is going to correctly testify to the Pennsylvania Bulletin section that allows state police to use radar and ask the court to take judicial notice of that? Is the police officer going to bring the certificate of accuracy along? And if he does bring the certificate of accuracy along, is it admissible? Oh, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, if you had a lawyer there, you might find a lot of times those things aren't as admissible as you think they are, and an acquittal is the only result. But hey, what do I know? Jeff, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Jeff.
Hi. How you doing?
Good, man. What's going on?
I got a little bill question. On my cell phone, I got charged for a couple of text messages that were incoming to me that were unsolicited. When I called the phone company, they said, you get charged whether you ask for the phone call or not. So I said, there's no way to do that. They said, no, unless you turn off all text messages, you have no choice.
Right.
And this turned out to be somebody who was misdialing a lot of times, like 13, 15 times. All right, and I started thinking about this. Wait a minute. If somebody sends you something by mail and you didn't ask for it, they can't make you pay for it. And I said, even if I didn't read, after the first two, right. I realized it was the same number, so I never read any of these. And they said you get charged whether you read them or not. The question is that legal?
Well, the long and short of it is this. Text messaging is an enhanced service, and I don't think it has a lot of regulation on it. But your initial contract with your carrier, I'm sure, will have something along those lines somewhere buried in the fine print. And while I like your analogy and you're correct, if I send you some goods in the mail, I can't charge you for them, and they're yours to keep if it's unsolicited. But that's a federal law that was passed years ago precisely to prevent people, because under the law of contracts and uniform commercial code, if you accept merchandise, you are deemed to have owed money for it. And so the feds actually created a law to prevent that. So it only applies to mail, though, that law.
Well, I mean, they extended the mail and electronics and certain electronic contracts. I didn't know if this would apply, and
I doubt it. I think you're going to find it's in your language. That's why we also have that junk fax law these days that say an unsolicited fax from the sender, they owe you $500 plus attorney's fees if they send you an unsolicited commercial fax.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're going to find that in your contract you've agreed that if you get a text message, this is how much you're going to pay for it. Now, I don't want to be a jerk off here, but here's what you got to do. If this is going to be a problem, either take up text messaging yourself and buy one of those flat rate plans, or just turn them all off.
Right, but I don't want to turn them all off. I just want to pay $3 to somebody who misdialed, and eventually the phone company suggested that I should text message them to tell me, to tell them they're sending it wrong numbers.
Right. And then they'll charge you for that.
That would cost me money,
right.
So I called them.
Right.
But, when you look at this on the long and short of it, this is something the phone company has decided they can do. And I'm aware that in Europe, because of this problem, they've basically made all incoming text messages free.
Well, in Europe for a long time, they actually have had all incoming stuff free, but that was a marketing plan for cell phones. That's why they had cell phones well before we did, because it was free. In other words, if you lived over in Europe, what you would do is you'd be like, okay, call me on my cell phone. You would call your friend and then tell them to call you back.
Okay.
So all incoming stuff. So my point on it is I don't think it's illegal. I mean, there's no requirement that you have a cell phone. There's no requirement that you have text messaging. So nobody's making you get that plan. And they're telling you is unless you block all text messaging, we're going to charge you for them.
Right.
I mean, it's not your right to get text messages.
Right, but it's just another delivery service, and for everything else on that phone, on the cell phone.
Right.
If I get a call and don't pick it up, I'm not charged.
Right.
I don't get charged for my minutes. I don't get charged for. So if I look at the number coming in, I have the right to refuse that.
Right, and there's a text message, it just comes in and it's yours. But you do have the right to refuse it en masse ahead of time or not. And they're giving you that choice, but I don't think anybody's violating your rights.
Well, they only give you the choice of refusing all text messages.
Right.
Right, but you can't block
but it's an enhanced.
Number.
See, that's the deal. It's an enhanced service. Text messaging, call forwarding, all that stuff considered advanced or enhanced services, and the FCC generally doesn't regulate enhanced services, the delivery of enhanced services. So that's where we're at, I believe. But if somebody knows better, I'll challenge them to post on Weekend Appointment and let us know, because that's the status of law as I last knew it.
Well, when you think about it, if I get charged $2 and 150 million people get charged $2, that's a bunch of money.
Well, now you're figuring out how they do it. It's like all those kids that text American Idol winners in. It's only a 99 cents charge or your regular plan. And you can imagine how many of those people aren't on their regular plan when they type in their 10 votes for $9.99.
Right, but they voluntarily did that. Here I'm not voluntarily doing this.
Well, I understand. Well, right, except that you have the ability to zap off all text messages, and that's what they would tell you. And that is what they're telling you. All right, Jeff, good luck.
Thanks.
Attila.
Yes, sir. How you doing there, Carl?
Good, my friend. What's going on?
Well, I was listening to the show. I usually listen. This is a great show, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I got a couple questions. Traffic laws. Now, all these little boroughs around here. I'm from Ohio, and I got a speeding ticket, and I was asking the lawyer. I was fighting it because I didn't think I was speeding. The speed limit changes so abruptly. In Ohio, when you see the sign for the speed limit, that's when you're allowed to go to that speed, or that's when you're required to go down to that speed. Is that the same in Pennsylvania?
When you see a sign with a reduction of speed, you're saying when do you have to slow down?
Yeah, right when you can read the sign, or also when the speed goes back up.
Yeah. The short answer is that actually denotes it's not where you can see it from. That actually marks the line. However, we have in our statute, you can't be pulled over you can be pulled over, but they can't run a speed trap within a certain distance of the sign. I think it's 500 feet.
Okay.
So in other words, if they're going to measure your speed with like a speed trap, like a radar gun or some lines on the road, I believe it's 500 foot past the sign before they can set up.
Okay.
To give you a chance to slow down. On the other hand, if the officer's behind you and he's using his odometer, he hasn't set up a speed trap. And the fact that you go by a sign isn't going to be able to say, well, he was within 500 feet of a sign, and it's not 500 feet before the sign; it's after the sign.
Oh, so before the sign, you got to remain at the lower speed until you pass the sign?
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay. That brings me to the other question. Are the local police allowed? I heard that they're not allowed to use radar guns. Only the state police are.
That's correct. In Pennsylvania, the local police cannot use radar.
Right. Great. Okay. Thanks for that. One more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Now, as far as this new texting thing, I usually don't text or, don't try not to use my cell phone when I'm driving because I do believe it's a distraction. Now, but what if you're just dialing your phone and not texting? How do they prove that you're just, you're texting and you can tell them you're dialing, no?
Well, yeah, welcome to my world. It's the officer's going to say, wow, that's what he was doing, I'm telling you.
Right, so it's going to come down to his word or yours.
Yeah, and they're saying they're not going to pull people over for it. They're going to just, add that on as an additional ticket while they're there.
Uh-huh.
To me, it's a bunch of malarkey. It's a money-making scheme, but what do I know?
Yeah, they're taking advantage of a situation to make some money.
Well, let's remember, Harrisburg is upside down financially, right? They're in worse shape than California.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the state's been talking about taking them over. And,
right.
So suddenly we come up with a scam that allows us to collect $100 tickets for nothing.
Yeah, that's a point. I mean, someone's getting paid big bucks to figure these things out.
Well, to do the math on this, if they can figure out how to write 5 of these a day, right, for their whole police force, pick up a minimum of $500 a day for the city. Now multiply 500 by the 300 some days in the year.
Right.
And $500 a day.
Cash cow.
That's was it $15,000 a month?
Yep.
I mean, just for doing nothing, and it's probably going to be closer to double that. So it's probably going to be worth $30K a month.
Right.
So it's probably going to be worth, they're probably going to make $500,000 a year when they're all said and done on it.
Wow.
Well, that'll help pay for the incinerator. That's I'm sure the plan.
There you go. Hey, Carl, thanks a lot, man.
All right, Attila, take care.
You're welcome. Bye.
I'm going to go to break. When I get back, I'll talk with Bob and Howard, 540-0580. See you after the break. (540-0580). That's the talk line number. Weekend appointment. My name's Carl Rominger. I'm an attorney at law. I'm going to answer your legal questions. Got a few of you here on the board. I'm going to take some calls, but I want to remind you to go to weekendappointment.com. You can contact me there. You can hire me there. You can post your questions there. You can do all kinds of things. You can get a free will. Make sure you go check out how to get a free will if you haven't already done that. Tons of you have, but not all of you have, because I have not done 1,200 wills, and I have 1,200 registered users so far, so I know a few people haven't availed themselves of the free will, but I know we have a lot more listeners than that, so make sure you do. And I did get an email from 3 Blue Cow Dogs at Hotmail, I guess, so that's who you are if you're listening. And you had a question about somebody giving you an invoice for $350 for work they allegedly did 3 years before. It's something you thought was just a favor. Basically, the emailer says somebody said, hey, I can fix this tractor for you. They assumed it was a kind of between the friends thing. They brought the tractor back, and they never heard anything, and nobody said any money was owed, and years went by, and 3 years later, they showed up and dropped off a bill for $350. They say they'd stopped by a few times but weren't able to find them, but as the emailer points out, they, for some reason, were unable to find stamps for the last 3 years, too, just in case. And they say, do we really owe anything? Well, the short answer is, yeah, a contract's good for 4 years. So you could be billed 3 years after the fact. On the other hand, there has to be a contract and agreement to pay in the first instance. And the fact that there isn't a prompt invoice would suggest that your assumptions were correct, that this was originally not going to be charged for, or at least that you reasonably believed you weren't paying for anything. They still might be able to make an unjust enrichment claim for the value you received if, in fact, they can show that there was a mistake on each side. But nonetheless, the fact that nobody mails you anything or does anything for 3 years is probably a pretty good defense. I'd tell them to take you to small claims court and let them fight it out with you. Bob, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. Hey, Bob.
Yes, Carl, thanks. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, I listen to you a lot, and I love your show. I love when you're on with Durgan, too.
Hey, thanks.
I hear you comment a lot about you'll get somebody off of a case, even though you know they're guilty because of a police technicality. And I just question, we pay the police a lot of money. They get a lot of good benefits. Why does that happen, and how does it happen? And do you think it happens too often?
Well, I'll tell you how. Well, yeah, let me explain what I think goes on. Police officers have, and I taught a class to some officers one time, and I said, the thing that I don't envy you about is I get to spend 2 days figuring out what you did wrong, and you've got about 15 seconds to figure out how to do it right. So sometimes it's as simple as that. They just make a mistake. But I'll tell you something. A lot of cops, officers who make obvious mistakes, they handle them right on the front end. They somehow get hold of the marijuana, but they realize that they couldn't get hold of the marijuana that way. So They take the kid's marijuana. They say, tell you what, I'm going to give you a warning and send them packing, take the marijuana and dispose of it, and everybody lives happily ever after. Kid's scared, might be scared straight for 2 weeks. The officer knows that he screwed something up, but he's not going to let on. But then he doesn't create a major fiasco, and he doesn't have to have a problem. That happens once in a while. But I think what happens is it depends on the department and the level of professionalism that the peers instill in one another, and then how well they're tested. And I found that, for instance, in Cumberland and Dauphin counties, the police do a pretty good job when it comes to basic search and seizure issues. There's not a lot of issues. I'm not going to name the county, but there's a rural county farther north, that it's not Perry County. I'm not picking on Perry County. I'm going a little farther north than that, but it's a rural county. Shane's happy because he always gets mad when I bust on Perry County. He was a sheep shearing champion, by the way. But up north in this little county, they stopped some kids because they were white. And they're like, oh, there were these white kids driving a car in this neighborhood that's predominantly not white, and so I stopped it. And you're like, I don't think you're allowed to stop a car because the people in it are a certain color. It seems like that to be a Fourth Amendment violation. But the answer is that was just something they do up in that county because that's the way the police force had either been trained or whoever was in charge had told these young officers that was acceptable practice, and nobody had really challenged it. So, because here's the other thing. A lot of times when it's not the crime of the century, let's say they keep getting kids with, marijuana pipes or it's a little crack on them or something, they get a simple possession charge, they plead guilty, they go to ARD, whatever, and nobody ever has a search and seizure hearing called a suppression hearing where everybody gets educated. And so there's a lot of give and take there. And so I think police departments that have counties that have good public defenders' offices, because they're the ones who are the front lines of criminal defense, and who have good private bar as well, have worked over the police for a while, so they know what to do. In other words, every officer can say to a young officer, now here's the way you do it, because otherwise those crazy lawyers are going to give you a hard time in court. And so I don't think it's a huge problem, but when it does happen, it happens more frequently than you think. And like I say, a lot of times it's just a screw up or lack of training. And then you have people that take shortcuts. And like any other job, there are people, that somebody's going to sweep stuff under the rug. They're going to try to solder something when they should replace it. Well, there are people that just take shortcuts, and they just don't get called on it a few times. And so, that's the other problem. When you have a criminal defendant and you have a search and seizure issue, here's how it works. I identify a good search and seizure issue, and the district attorney says, I'll tell you what, I'll let him plead to a year in jail instead of 5 years in jail. And you talk to the client. You go, what do you want to do? You want to take a hearing? If we win, you walk. If we lose, you're going down on a 5-year mandatory. But the DA will let you do a year in the county. And you do the year in the county because it's the only practical answer. Plus, as I remind the client, you're guilty, so you shouldn't feel so bad about it.
Right. Well, thank you. It just seems like I hear that police didn't do the right thing a little bit too much, and just puts a question mark in my mind.
Well,
Yeah.
and again, I just want to say, I mean, that's where we make our hay in some cases where guilt or innocence is just cut or dry. Search and seizure is your only way. So a lot of drug cases, for instance, it's a search and seizure type issue. On the other hand, a lot of cases don't really rest or turn on the police officer. They rest or turn on the victims or witnesses themselves. And the one good thing for going for criminal defense attorneys is that the victims quite often are as spotty as the perpetrators, and the witnesses are usually even squirrelier. And so
All right.
you read stuff in the newspaper, and then you go into a courtroom and you hear what people have to say, and you're like, did these three people were they in the same room? Because not one of them has described the same series of events.
All right. Well, listen, you do a great job. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Thanks for holding. Howard, you're on WHP 580.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just had a question about seatbelt law, actually.
Okay.
Well, I'm a truck driver, and there was a state police officer sitting on a bridge looking down, and he seen I didn't have my seatbelt on. So he chased me down the highway 5 miles and pulled me over and gave me a ticket for a seatbelt. And when I asked him, I said, I thought that was a secondary offense.
Yeah.
And his answer was that they hold truck drivers to a higher standard. That's basically, I paid the ticket, but I was just kind of wondering if that was factual or...
And what was he claiming? He was trying to claim it different for a CDL driver?
Correct.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's what he told me. He said, I said I thought it was a secondary offense and that you needed to have a reason to pull me over first and then give me the seatbelt ticket.
Did he write you up under the Pennsylvania seatbelt statute, or did he write you up under a CFR?
Seatbelt statute.
Huh. Well, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Would you post that as a question on weekendappointment.com?
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, go to weekendappointment.com, register, post it as a question on there, and I will answer it because I want to know the answer to that.
Yeah, because, I paid the ticket because, it was matter of fact, the ticket was higher, too. It was $125.
Yeah. Yeah, post that on there, and I'll look it up. I want to know the answer because I thought it was a secondary offense for all purposes, too, unless he's claiming he used, CFR as the basis to stop you, maybe some crazy code of federal regulations. That just for everybody who's listening, when you're a commercial driver, there are certain federal codes that can be applied to you through a state enabling statute for a purpose officer to pull you over. So he might have said, well, the seatbelt issue creates a CFR issue, but I'll write you up under our statute because now I've got you pulled over. I can make that observation as part of that stop.
Yeah, he told me he was specifically pulling trucks over for that specific reason. And he said I was the fourth person that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was sitting on top of a bridge on 78 coming from
right.
Allentown towards Harrisburg. And I was like, I was furious.
Yeah.
You have got to be kidding me.
Well, and here, why I feel for you, because you guys are the most overregulated industry in America.
Oh my, yeah.
You probably could have 5,000 different violations that might actually implicate other people's safety.
Right.
And you don't have one of those. You've done everything right. You've done your pre-trips, your post-trips. You got your logbook up to date.
Logbook, physical, everything.
And,
looked over everything. And
some guy writes you up a ticket because you didn't click your seatbelt. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't need a mother.
Right.
I'm not affecting anybody but me.
Right. And I understand the theory of, okay, we should wear our seatbelts, et cetera, but I also understand that, like I say, compared to the average motorist, you have so many other things to comply with and worry about, and you've done all that. That's the stuff we should care about.
Right.
I want your brakes to work, right? I don't care if you wear your seatbelt.
Yeah. But it was, I probably would have went and fought it, but it was 75 miles away.
Yeah, that's how they get you, my friend.
Yeah, because it was towards Allentown.
That's how they get you.
A day at work, and
I'll give you a free hint though. You can send a lawyer if you're a truck driver or a regular motorist and you get a ticket out of the area. You can always send a lawyer in your stead, and they can defend in your absence.
Right, and they can speak in your behalf.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
Alrighty.
Shane, do I have to go to break here? Okay, I got to go to break. 540-05. Hey, welcome back, 540-0580. My name's Carl Rominger. I'm answering your legal questions here on Weekend Appointment. Don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com and register to get your free will. Also, we got those two $10 Applebee's gift certificates we're going to be giving away to any registered member, including people who registered by 7 p.m. today. I give you till 7 p.m. because I realize you might be out on the road right now. It's not that hard to do. And if you've not been back to the site, but you've been there before, and you say, oh, it was confusing, I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. We have reworked the entire site. We've got this great new upgrade in the software. It's much smoother. It's prettier. It's going to have even more information on it. We've already started to add that. So you're really going to like it. Paul, you're on WHP 580.
They ain't paying?
Yeah, I'm paying.
Hello?
Yeah,
What's
my
going
name is Paul.
What's
and,
going
I'm in trouble with a water bill.
Okay.
What had happened is I had moved down here to High Spire, and for the last 14, 15 months, we've been getting a water bill, and I've been paying.
Okay.
Just to find out recently that they said that our water meter is off.
Paul, are you backing up or something?
No, I'm in the car, and there's a beeping sound. Let me just turn it off altogether. Anyway, they said that my water meter's been off, and that they want us to pay approximately 7,000 gallons a month for the last 14 months.
Okay.
Which is around $40 to $50 a month. We've been paying the bill that they've been sending us, and we thought it was kind of low, so we had no problems using the water.
Right, right.
We weren't being sparingly, like we would have if we knew that it was more expensive.
Right,
So
right.
is there anything? How can they charge me their mistake?
Well, it is their mistake, and they've underbilled you, but you did get you did get the water. Sounds like a good one for a compromise. I'd try to make them an offer and say, here's what's fair. Figure out what would have been a fair rate for the water, and try that. But, the answer is you're kind of stuck with municipal stuff because they're going to say, this is our rate, this is what we delivered. There was a metering problem. We weren't aware of it. You weren't aware of it, which makes it a mutual mistake.
No, but they should have been aware of it if they were getting a certain payment off of us each month.
Right.
15 months, they've been taking the payment. Right.
Now, and then, you got a good argument that if they should have known or did know, then you're fine. If you both make the mistake, then I think you got a problem because it's a mutual mistake.
Right, but how do I know? How did I know it was a mistake?
Well, that's what I mean. I'm just telling you that if it's a mistake for both of you, in other words, both of you didn't realize that the meter wasn't operating right, then the contract's subject to rescission. On the other hand, if it's a unilateral mistake, it may be possible that you can hold them to the payments they accepted. All right, my friend, I got two more callers I got to take here.
What would have to do?
Dan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Who'd you say, Dan?
Dan, yeah.
Yeah, hi, this is Dan, yeah. Good talking with you.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Two quick questions for you. First one quicker maybe than the first. First one is, as an attorney in Pennsylvania here, Carl, are you considered anything like a officer of the court?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So you are a part of the court system, right? And you're considered an officer of the court, huh? Is that the official term?
I'm an officer of the court, and I have duties to the court. And when I speak to the court, I don't have to be put under oath because it's presumed that I will tell the truth to the court.
Okay. All right. I was just curious about that. Okay, thank you. And the second question relates to a caller that called last week. Gentleman called and asked about, or stated the fact that basically we don't own our own property because of having to pay taxes on it, and if you don't pay your taxes on your property, they will ultimately at the end of the period of time will come with force or with a gun and say, they're taking their property.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, you had responded something to the effect of, well, the courts have stated that that's okay and it's just the way it is.
Right. That sounds about right.
Okay. That's what I thought. And that's where my problem is. I'm a little disappointed. I guess it could be one of two things. Either you could be what someone has referred to as a dummy then, or a deceiver. Either you're not aware of the problem, which, I'm not mocking you by saying you'd be a dummy then, but you'd be ignorant of the fact, or you're a deceiver. You know the fact that the law system that we're under that allows that to happen is not really lawful. We ought to be under an allodial type system, which would allow a person to own land free and clear. Is that correct?
Well, we do own land in fee simple, which gives you a lot of rights in it. But land can be taken from you if there's a debt that's tied to that land.
Isn't that tied to more or less what is it called, the feudal type system?
That's right. We're on a feudal. we're on a feudal system. The other thing, and remember this. Oh, there goes the music. I got to go. And I'm sorry, Glenn, I didn't reach you. Call me next week or go to weekendappointment.com and post your question there. I'll be happy to answer it. And I've just learned I'm going to be filling in for Bob Durgan tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock here on WHP. So if you're a listener today and you had a legal question, I'll be on the Durgan Show tomorrow afternoon, so you can come on there and shoot me a few legal questions. Although I think the callers are going to be beating me up because, anyhow, I'll see you tomorrow and see you next week.